Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and welcome to the latest episode of the Hard Compound Live. For those of you who don't know, my name is Rich and I run the Hard Compound. We're a one-stop shop for all things motorsport, from four wheels, two wheels, on-road, off-road, single-seaters, touring cars, NASCAR, and everything in between, if there is such a thing. We do that with race reviews, race previews, any breaking news, car livery reveals, throwbacks, birthday wishes to our favorite drivers, past and present, and much, much more on our Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, excuse me, and Instagram accounts. Search for the Hard Compound on any of those platforms. Give us a follow so you don't miss any of the good motorsport stuff. In case you hadn't noticed, we also do live interviews, such as this one. These are streamed live on Facebook, Twitter, and our YouTube channel, automatically saved on both. If you're on Facebook, they are all saved in the video section, as well as some live things that we've done from trackside here in the UK. And they are, of course, saved in the live section on our YouTube channel. So plenty of great interviews to watch there, if you so wish. Just to give you a quick rundown, we've had a few from the two-wheeled world, from the four-wheeled world. We've had some from the British Touring Car Championship and the World Touring Car Championship. Some of the biggest names, the likes of Mr. Tom Coronel, Andy Prio, Ivan Muller. We've spoken with Frank Sittner from the world of business as well. And we've spoken with a number of people who have crossed over from F1 to IndyCar to sports car and the likes of Mr. Derek Warwick. We spoke with David Brabham. We spoke with Eddie Cheever, Mark Blundell, Ari Lyondike, Danny Sullivan, Willie T. Ribbs, Alanza Jr. We've spoken with Dalton Kellett, J.I. Hildebrand, spoke with Brian Herter. We spoke with Paul Page, broadcasting royalty from the US, and many, many more. And we've had the privilege of speaking with Mario Andretti and with Jackie X. So plenty of good content for you, but do not go anywhere because we have a terrific live guest for you this evening. She is blazing a trail through the media world in North America, specifically on the NASCAR roots side of things, having been a racer herself. So without any further ado, I am going to stop rambling, and I'm going to bring her in, joining us live from somewhere near Charlotte in the USA. Please join me in extending a very warm welcome to Miss Jacklyn Drake.
Hi, how are you?
Jacklyn, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for inviting me onto the show.
No, well, thank you very much for coming on. It's very much appreciated. I know you're busy. It's in the middle of your working day there. So thank you very much for sparing some time to come on, have a chat. Pardon my long rambling intro. It gets longer every time. So apologies for that.
No, that's a good thing if the intro is getting longer. You've had so many great guests right here on the compound, and I feel very lucky to be a part of the lineup. So I appreciate the invite, and I know you got your coffee, so it's a little bit later there than it is here in the United States. So hopefully I keep you awake.
No, it's all fine. I'm sure we'll all stay awake through this. Absolutely no problem at all. Coffee always helps, especially when you've been up since 5 o'clock in the morning. So, but it's all good. Right. We just to let you know, we have tried to cross post this over to Jacklyn's page, but it hasn't seemed to work. So I've tried it and copied links and pressed buttons, and it didn't seem to work this time. So, but anyway, if you've not tuned in live, then you can watch this back. No problem at all. If you have any questions or comments, do put them in the comments section, whether you're on Twitter, Facebook, or on YouTube. We'll see them in real time. So any questions, put them in, and we will work them in. Phew, right. I'm out of breath already. Yeah, firstly, thank you again very much for coming on, having a chat. It's always nice to speak to people who have got a slightly different story in motorsport and a different journey. And we'll come to the fact that it's a male-dominated arena and you've blown it apart with your journey. But firstly, how did you get interested in motorsport in the first place?
Well, I have to give that to my parents. Both my father and my mom were past racers. When I was born, my dad was still competing in dirt racing. He was doing sprint cars. So it was something that I started out at a very young age, attending the racetracks. I attended my first race I ever attended. I was 6 weeks old. I was a baby. And my dad actually got a suite set up so my mom could bring me to the track and we could watch his races. And all of my toddler memories were being at the dirt track, playing with the race cars beside the trailer, organizing the toolbox, and spending that time watching my dad race. So it was a rite of passage, so to speak, to get myself as well as my brother involved, and it came very natural.
I love that. That's possibly the earliest possible start, isn't it? After what you were 6 weeks old or something, and you're at a racetrack, which is absolutely fantastic. I mean, it kind of feels like you didn't have a choice.
Yeah, I mean, I could see. I think it's like anything, something that you become really passionate about that starts that young. Your family is involved in it, and they kind of get you watching it or attending it. But I fell in love with racing so quickly. I remember having such a admiration for sprint cars, for my dad competing, the entire atmosphere. I mean, we had my entire family was there. My brother, we played together out of the track. We'd make friends. All of our family friends would come. My dad's friends, they would all crew on his car. So it really was like a family event every single week that we would go and we would travel to. And so I fell in love with just the aspect of as a unit coming together as a team and trying to compete. And not to mention, my dad was really good. So he won lots of races. So there was lots of celebrating mixed in with all of it. But I felt like because I started at such a young age, I got to fall in love with the sport and like the true passion that is tied in with the people that you love most. So I feel very blessed to have experienced that.
That's great. It's kind of like rather than sort of seeing it on TV and watching who's winning and doing that, you saw immediately the team behind the scenes and the unit and the family that made racing possible, rather than the end result, which is always I think is a great start. I didn't have that, but it sounds like you had it sounds like a good way to grow up to me.
Yeah, and I mean, my family, my parents at that young age, they were still growing their business. So they both now, my mom and my dad have successful businesses. My dad has an automotive repair shop in Fort Worth, Texas. My mom has an engine shop, and they were still growing those businesses. So they were hardworking business people Monday through Friday, and then we would pack up everything and we would go to the racetrack on the weekends. And it really was a grind, which I still feel like I'm doing that grind now, and I'm 30 years old. So I don't think it's ever stopped. And my mom has always been like, you stayed busy since you were a baby and it hasn't stopped yet. And I'm like, you're right. Guilty.
It's good. I mean, it's good that you're busy, and obviously, you're getting busier, which we're going to come to very shortly. Obviously, I've done some research on sort of you and your racing life and broadcasting life and stuff. What struck me though, you're from if there is such a thing as a small town in Texas, everything's big there, I'm led to believe. From a town, it's just south of sort of Dallas and that area, isn't it?
Yes.
Forgive me for saying it doesn't look like a motor racing hub. um,
No.
was it just sort of? I've seen there's a few like ovals, and there's a couple of drag strips nearby and that kind of a thing. Just looking on the maps and stuff. I mean, some people that they come from Indianapolis or they come from upstate New York near Watkins Glen or somewhere. And there's an obvious start point. It doesn't look as though you had one as a circuit.
No, I grew up, I was born in Fort Worth, Texas, but my family shortly moved to Maypearl, Texas, which is where I spent kindergarten through graduating high school there. So my entire growing up existence happened in Maypearl. And I actually have like a joke in my Twitter bio that says, grew up on a farm, liked race cars more, because so Farm life was great. I loved living in the country. I loved all the animals we had and the experiences, but the school that I went to was so small. I was one of the few people that was interested in racing, much less involved in racing. There was one other kid that did motocross, so I was doing something completely different. And I stood out like a sore thumb because of that. Most of the kids in my school were very interested in FFA and agriculture, which is great, but I was interested in cars and going fast and all that comes with the racing lifestyle. So not only was I like in an environment that necessarily wasn't linked to my interests, but we had to travel so far to go to all the racetracks. The closest one was an hour away. As I got older, the closest track was 5 hours away. We went to multiple states to compete. And I love that I grew up in Maypearl because it really did shape me. And I think it made me more friendly versus if I would have grown up in a big city. But yeah, it's something that is not on the map unless you zoom in really small. We have no stoplights. My parents still own the farm and there's still cattle and there's lots of farm stories I could tell you about the time there.
Always love a farm story. It's always good. I mean, it's not quite Radiator Springs from Cars, the movie, is it? But it's a small place, and I just think it's great that people from the motorsport world, they come from all kinds of different backgrounds, which is fantastic. I mean, just very quickly, I mean, we spoke to a guy called like Rick Parfitt Jr., who is in a British touring cars and a British GT racer. His father was in the band called like Status Quo back in the 70s, and he was the guitarist, big, huge, worldwide band. He learned he first went racing lawnmowers with the guitarist from Queen, which I think is the coolest way to start racing. Amazing kind of guy. Cool. Michelle Boyd, I'm going to assume that you know her. She says backroading was our favorite.
Yes, Michelle
that sounds like you went tearing up the back roads in a car.
Yes, Michelle was my childhood best friend, still my best friend. We've been inseparable basically through elementary, high school, and even now as adults, even though she's in Texas. So we did enjoy backroading. My first car that I ever drove, like legally on the road, I had a dually with a 454 in it. So I had this like jacked up truck and we would backroad in that. And then I shortly had a Camaro after that, but yeah.
Awesome. Backroading a Camaro. Love that. Things that don't happen in the UK. We've got, just before we move on to the racing side, got a couple of questions coming in. Firstly, Randy Oswald, good evening, Randy. He says, are you going to the modified race at Lincoln on Sunday?
I am not. I'm not. Thank you for asking. I'm hoping to come out to Lincoln at some point this year. I'm actually off this weekend because I'm attending a close friend's wedding in Charleston. So yes, normally I would be at the racetrack this weekend, but I am not.
Yeah, prior engagements, no problem. Question here from Oliver Taylor. He's a good friend of mine. Evening, Ollie. This is quite this could take a very long time to answer, but it says here a lot of the UK is still blind to just how good the racing in the US is. I mean, we see IndyCar on Sky Sports and a bit of NASCAR, and that's about it. But there's all the quarter midgets and the dirt track ovals and so much good stuff going on. And very quickly, I mean, how best can you sell it to us Brits? How good the US racing is, because so many people, when it drives around the twist, say, "Oh, it's just going round in circles. It's going left all the time." And I want to punch people when they say it because it's so. I mean, it is a fantastic variety, isn't it, that you've got out there?
It really is, and you kind of hit on it yourself. But from the dirt racing to asphalt racing to the big super speedways, live events are so much more than what you see on television. Dirt racing, even being one of them, having 3 or 4 wide at the Chili Bowl on a bull ring that's man-made inside of an expo center. I can't describe the energy at the Daytona 500. It's exhilarating. It's the most excited that I have ever been at a sporting event, with the Thunderbirds like blasting over the speedway and all the fans out in the grass, truly embracing what motorsports is, which is like the thrill of fast cars and all the energy that goes into competing at this high level. Like that's the highest level that you can get in America. So I would definitely say anything, be open-minded, is better live than what you can just see on your phone.
Absolutely, fully agree. I said I went to the Indy 500 last year, and I mean, I've heard that the Daytona 500 is on another level because the NASCAR fans, shall we say, are excitable. I mean, the
Mhm.
IndyCar fans are pretty good, but the NASCAR fans are nuts. And the Daytona 500 is on my list, and I'm struggling to think of anything better than the Indy 500 right now because that was so much better than anything I've been taught, the British Grand Prix and bike racing in Holland and stuff like that.
Mhm.
You guys just make an event out of everything, and it's absolutely fantastic, and I love it.
And I will say NASCAR specifically has done a lot of work at injecting, like you said, making it an event. So, yes, there's a race here, but this is an experience. They have at track activations that you can go in. You can take your kids. There's an entire kids zone now. You get to listen to live music. There's pre race concerts. They have impeccable clothing, any type of things, whether you want to go for vintage or if you want to go for a certain driver, you have that whole shopping experience that's on the speedway grounds. If you go into the pits, you can be in the garage, you can be, you know, 12 inches away from a guy that's about to go change the tire on a pit stop. There's just so much to it, so many different layers. Even if you go and you just camp in the campground and experience all the people and the atmosphere, there really is something for everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I'm just going to touch on my own personal story just for a moment. I mean, we went to the Indy 500. We went to Carb Day on the Friday. We went to race day on the Sunday. I've had like Ari Lyndike and Danny Sullivan and these IndyCar drivers on here for a chat. My heroes when I was a kid, and we just went up and we met Ari Lyndike, and he just said, "Oh, what kind of passes do you guys have?" And he goes, "Oh, just normal access tickets." He was like, "Come with me," and he took us into the kitchen and stuff, and into the pits and everything. But there were so many fans there, which you don't get at F1 and things like that. And as you say, the shopping. I mean, I did a lot of damage with t-shirts and hats, and I bought a Team
Mhm.
Penske sign, and I just but it's brilliant. There's so much to do, as you say, and it's a proper event. And then when the planes go overhead
I
and
love that.
they take your head off, because we didn't know that was going to happen. So,
Oh no.
like,
So you were
Jesus.
terrified.
But no, fantastic. I think, yeah, Brits, if you want to get out to a proper racing experience, go out to the States. I think Jacklyn sold it absolutely perfectly. Right, okay. Crikey, we've been 20 minutes in. We've just been rambling a bit here. My good friend Simon Beale has commented, yes, the build-up is great. We witnessed that at the 500 live last year. Absolutely. It was brilliant. Fully recommended. Daytona 500, I'm coming for you.
Mhm.
So, I mean, obviously, you've grown up in the family and you've traveled around with a racing family and all this kind of thing. When did you first, I mean, and I'm going to assume your parents didn't try and dissuade you at all. When did you start thinking, I want to do this? I want to have a go.
I don't remember having a moment that it was a switch that, okay, yeah, now I want to go racing. I just remember turning of age, which was 6 at the time. Now you can start racing much younger, but turning 6 and getting a go kart and we're going to go racing. My dad asked me, he said, "What do you want your race car to look like?" We were still building it at the time. I said, "I want it to be pink and purple, and I want it to be number 13." And he's like, "Why would you pick number 13? That's historically a like bad luck number to have." I'm like, "Dad, it's my favorite cartoon channel. We're going to be number 13." And he's like, "Okay." So that was
That's
my
the
first
best
race
reason
car.
behind any number ever. That's
Yep,
brilliant.
yeah. I just couldn't get enough of channel 13 AERA, but so we go racing and I was very much a friendly competitor. At this age, you're like driving, you're waving at your friends, and you're kind of just joyriding. You're not really competing, you're not really racing. And I vividly remember my dad, he kind of gave me most of that first year to just be acclimated to being in a race car. I don't remember, I know some kids at that age, they get scared. I don't remember ever being scared. I don't remember ever really being like, I don't want to do this. I just remember being very friendly on the track. And my dad, towards the end of that season, he knelt down beside my car, and I was sitting in the chute, and beside me was one of my friends, Preston, who was sitting in his go kart. And he said, "Did you see the trophy whenever we came in?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I saw the trophy." He's like, "Well, do you want to take the trophy home, or do you want your friend to take the trophy home?" I'm like, "Dad, I want to take the trophy home. I want the trophy." And he said, "You don't have any friends when you go out on the racetrack."
Wow.
And from that point on, I became very aggressive driver. The next year, my race car was not pink and purple; it was red and black, and then we swapped, but it was never like it wasn't ever any girly colors after that. But I remember being very aggressive to the point where I think I took Preston out, put him in the wall at one point. Then I had to apologize. We won over like 300 races in go karts, several championships. We went into quarter midgets. Like it changed as soon as my dad said I couldn't be friends with anyone on the racetrack. So
Something switched.
yeah.
Wow. I love that because there's a lot of people that say, "Oh, you know, you got to teach kids it's all about taking part and having fun," and that, which is fine, but you got to know how good it feels to win. You know,
Oh,
and then once it happens, you're like, right, get out there, you know, and you put your
winning
friend in
was
the wall. I mean, fair play.
yeah. I had the most fun whenever I won. I will say I was very fierce competitor. I'm still a fierce competitor now, but I don't know why I vividly like remember that conversation, but I can still picture it today. Like I can still picture myself sitting in the car and talking to him and like deciding that I was going to take what he said very seriously. And I think he's probably proud that I did take his advice, but
Absolutely.
we had some other lessons along the way of like maybe not the right time or the right time. So
Yeah. No, that's I love that. I mean, you just said someone's just commented. That's what I call top parenting. Yeah, top dad. Oh, and Michelle's just said, "Yep, fearless for sure. She is the best driver I know, but she used to scare the out of me on the back roads." There you go. It wasn't just limited to the racetrack.
no, okay. Well, what she's referring to, we'll go back to the Camaro really quick. So I had a 98 Camaro that I would drive around on the back roads, and we would get pretty fast because we knew these. We drove them all the time. But we were driving late at night, and we came down this hill, and we came up onto a railroad track, which I forgot that it was there. And so the car bottomed out pretty like viciously on the railroad track because they're low ride Camaros, right? Anyways, I didn't think anything of it. We just kept driving and I was like, wow, man, we really hit that railroad track. And then I found out like a week after that, we had dented the whole oil pan of the car because of
Oh,
that reason. So it was fine. We got it fixed. But that was a moment that I think I freaked her out. Sorry, Michelle.
yeah. But you're still friends. So it's fine.
Yes.
It's worked out fine. I mean, you mentioned about going racing and the karting and everything. You mentioned the like quarter midgets. Now, this is something I really want to go and watch because it just looks absolutely brilliant fun. It looks great fun. It's great racing, but it's hard racing as well, isn't it? Because we don't have it over here in the UK, and I think a lot of people are thinking here in the UK, thinking, what is it? But they're kind of like little mini go kart stock buggy type things, aren't they? And they're absolutely fantastic things.
They are. It's something that I got involved in because when I was racing go-karts, I was racing on dirt. And we were winning so much when we were dirt racing that my dad had suggested we switch over to asphalt. He didn't necessarily want me competing in sprint cars, which is what he was doing. He felt they were too dangerous. So he's like, all right, we're going to get you involved in asphalt racing. And at that point, quarter midgets was the closest next step with my age that we could get involved in. The closest quarter midget track was 3.5 hours from our home. So we would compete and drive 3.5 hours almost every weekend to go do that. So we went from driving an hour every weekend to now driving 3.5 hours, or sometimes 4 if we had to go to San Antonio. And that was quite the experience. I was in quarter midgets for several years. We competed in essentially every division. My dad and one of my friends' father actually invented like a division of quarter midgets that they built a specific mod engine for it. And we won several championships within those years, more races. We set track records. Like we were very successful in competing in those, as well as Hoosier Tire was getting involved in developing their own line of quarter midget tires, and we were a test developer for that. So there was a lot of fun times in that division of racing before we had to move into legend cars.
Yeah. And you touched on the Legends cars. I mean, we have them over here, kind of. We've got a thing called the American Speed Fest at Brands Hatch, a circuit here. And they are fantastic. They're actually going to be on the support series to the British Touring Car Championship, which is the biggest car racing series here in the UK. And I love them. They just look like a lot of fun. They kind of look like old school sort of, I don't know, cars from like the 1920s, but souped up, shrunk down, and just brilliant.
They're little coupes. Sometimes you have like the bubble coupe, which is what I had, or they have the sedans, which we call like the old man legend cars if you race a sedan. But so the legend cars, essentially every step that we would take was age driven, because you can't get into late models. Now you can get into late models a little bit younger, but at the time I couldn't get into late models until I was like 16-ish, so we could start testing at 15. So we were in legend cars, which we did that at Texas Motor Speedway, which was also a lot of fun. And funny enough, I competed in legend cars with my now current boyfriend, but never met him back then. So it's like, it's a very weird story. We might have to come back to that, but yeah.
Yeah, we can. Yeah, that's amazing. So your paths crossed at a younger age, and see, it's meant to be. It was meant to be. I mean, the Legends cars, great fun little things. But then the step from there to the super late models, they're big things. I mean, was that quite a change? I mean, again, we don't have late models here. They're the kind of the sideways stock cars, asphalt type things, aren't they? Which again, look a lot of fun, but they are brutes, aren't they? They're big, powerful things.
Well, they're full body stock cars. So jumping legend cars, you have to shift, but it's just pulling back. So in late models, you have to physically like go into all the gears. You have reverse. So I actually struggled, which makes me sound like a little like weakling, but I struggled with putting the late model in reverse because of the way that you had to do the shifter. So I felt like I was pretty well in shape whenever I was racing that often, but then like going into late models, I really had to step up at least my upper body strength and work out a lot of like my forearm strength and into my shoulders to feel like I could control the car better, as well as if the power steering was to go out or things of that nature, because you're just dealing with more power, bigger car. There's also just many more layers of strategy you have to put in. Now you're dealing with tire strategy. You have a spotter in your ear. There's, limited view that you can see while in a late model. So you really can't see, back, right, rear at all. You have mirrors, but you're not supposed to be mirror racing. So there was a lot of things that I had to learn, again, pretty young age doing that. But had a lot of fun, and we ended up winning the Rookie of the Year the first year that I was racing full time. And then I only had one more year of that, and then I graduated high school. So
wow, That's a pretty rapid rise. I mean, just as a time scale here, this was what 2009 I've got from my research. It was around
Yeah,
that
so
kind of time.
2010 was my that's when I graduated, and it was when I had my last late model race. Well, back then, I have then such raced one more time.
Yes, yes. I mean, so at that point, and obviously, you finished like high school, and um, I'm guessing your parents would say, saying that you still have to go and get some education and get a career and do whatever it is that you want to do. I mean, at that time, were you thinking you wanted to be a racing driver, or was there, or was it always more just as a as a hobby at that time?
Well, so in the time that I was competing in late models, so essentially this was like my end of sophomore, junior, senior year, I had applied for NASCAR's Drive for Diversity. I'd also applied into another driving program to pursue the next step of what this would mean for racing. As we see now, and as it was then, racing is very much a funded, sport. You have to have someone sponsoring you, and we didn't necessarily have the funding for me to go at that level. I had applied twice to the Drive for Diversity, NASCAR Drive to Diversity. Oh, I cannot speak now. And I made it through a couple of the beginning phases, but then I didn't make it any further than that, which was definitely a full circle moment when I hosted the event last year. But so I initially had tried to pursue it as something more full time. My dad was very transparent with me with saying, hey, we are not going to be able to take you financially to, we're not going to sell everything and move to North Carolina. That's not our, stick in this. We've had a good run. Like, if you still want to race now that you've graduated from high school, we need to get sponsorship to continue racing. But at this point, you're an adult. So you're kind of like, all right, what am I doing with college? Where am I going from here? And what do I want to do in my life moving forward? So I had to make some really tough choices on what I really wanted, instead of like continuing to race cars. Like, okay, now I'm in college, I'm working full time. What are we trying to accomplish here? And I was crazy about making money, getting a job, moving out. Like, I was ready. I'm like, I'm ready to be an adult, 18 years old. Like, let's go. I want out of here. So I figured, okay, we're going to do a pause on racing. I'm going to pursue being an adult, the next phase of life here, be responsible. And then prior,
That's not what I was like at 18. No, so well done.
it's weird, right? Like, how you get to that age and you're either like, I'm all about growing up, or you're like trying to slow down time. It's either one or the other. You're either one of the other people. Like, you're like, oh no, I'm not ready. The second, yeah.
No, mom.
No. Yeah. And then I had considered working in the sport. I had said, yeah, I'd be interested in moving to North Carolina, but I really didn't think it through logistically what all that meant. So I wasn't taking it super serious whenever I started doing college. That's kind of where I was at that point.
Right. Okay. It was kind of like the right mindset, but not a plan type thing. It was.
Yeah.
But you went off to college, and you got qualified. I read somewhere you wanted to be a teacher, which is kind of cool. But then you went off and did it with like sciencey things, which I'm no good at. But so when you graduated college, what was the plan then? Was there a plan? Because I've got a kind of note here that you went to work. Was it with like, was it Roush Yates engine? Now, I might be wrong here. Roush, is that Jack Roush of Roush Fenway and all that? Is that it's
Yes.
that way? Yes, knowledge.
Yeah, you got it.
Good. How did that come about once you graduated?
Well, I am going to blow your mind because
I'm ready.
this was a very small area of time where my choices could have been considered questionable. But it's essentially, I'm going to try to sum it up. I was going to college. I was trying to finish out college. I wanted to be a teacher. My parents were like, listen, teachers do not make a lot of money. You maybe might want to consider a different profession. Because I really wanted to be a second grade teacher. I had done some teaching internships whenever I was in high school. And so I reconsidered that notion. I got to a point where I was really flustered at going to college. I just wanted to work full time. I was working with my parents at their business at the time. And while I was doing that, I decided I don't have enough on my plate. Let me also start to do freelance marketing for my friends that are still racing because I want to be involved. So I started doing graphic for them. I started doing some PR for some drivers in North Carolina while I was living in Texas, while also trying to finish college and also working 50-hour weeks and living in Fort Worth by myself in an apartment. Um, I
Did
get the
did you not sleep for like a year or two?
It was bad. No, I did not
Wow.
sleep very well. I had really bad acne. Like, it was not it was not it was very, stressful time there. But so I had met someone, I had met this guy that lived in North Carolina, and we started dating long distance. And I knew my lease was coming up in my apartment, and I knew that I was interested in moving to North Carolina because I really wanted to like dive all in on being a part of the motorsports industry, although I had no idea. I was very naive. I had no idea what I was about to commit myself into, but I knew I wanted to dive all in. And I also was seeing this person. So I thought, it might be a good idea for me to move. My family was not on board. My parents were terrified at this decision. They did not think that I should have made that decision at the time. They were like, I don't know, moving 17 and a half hours away from your home state might not be the wisest idea.
Wow.
And you don't have a job lined up and you don't have like money to live on, but
That's the thing that us Brits, because we're a very small country, we don't realise the distances involved in, there's only what 4 or 5 states in between, well, if that, between Texas and North Carolina. But if we did, it's to the west, isn't it? So if I went west from here by that distance, I'd be the other side of Moscow. I'd be like, I'd be like halfway through Russia, which is
yes.
it's a huge move for you.
Yes, it was a huge move. I did not have my ducks in a row. I was not ready to move, but I sure did. I did road tripped the 17 and a half hours. And spoiler alert, I did not keep the guy, but I did get the racing job. So it all worked out, I guess.
It worked out for perhaps the best in the long run, maybe. Who knows?
Yeah.
But so and that was the job with Roush 8 engines.
Yes. Well, yeah. So how that came
Yes.
about, the job at Roush, I was in North Carolina for about 4 or 5 months. I could not get a job in the racing industry. I ran into someone who worked at Roush and we connected. He recommended my resume to the manager and I went in for an interview. I got hired originally as a graphic designer, although that job evolved over the 4 years into multiple other positions. And I got to do a lot of really cool work for the Yates family as well. So it ended up being like something that I didn't expect, but it turned into really awesome opportunity. I was a part of the Ford GT program. I won awards there for marketing campaigns and videos that I developed, one of them being right here behind me. I got to be part of the Ford Returns Back to Le Mans reenactment because we went back 50 years later and then we won. So it
Wow,
was, yeah, it ended up being a really great thing that came about.
that's amazing. I didn't realize you were involved in the whole Le Mans thing. That's cool. That's another
Yeah,
one on the bucket list. Honestly, the bucket list is so long, but that's a very cool thing. And
yeah.
you can't. Could you imagine that it would have gone that well when you got there? Because it happens.
No. And looking back, because when I moved away to North Carolina, I was 21, and looking back at my early 20s, essentially, my early 20s, and the way I approached things or the way I thought things would unfold is totally different from the reality of life. You are just so much wiser the older you get. It's true. It's not just like something someone says. You
Yeah.
learn wisdom, you definitely, it's like that diamond under heat, like becomes sparklier and better. And so there was a lot of hard times in my early 20s that I'm so thankful I got the opportunity at Roush. But had I never got that opportunity, I definitely wouldn't be where I am today. It's just it's all a stepping stone into what the dominoes are and what God essentially has laid out for us.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so you've done this awards, the marketing, and all it's all going rather well. You ended up you got involved with the like cars tour, and
Mhm.
then Pit Road TV. When did sort of the switch to the media presenting, reporting, hosting side come into it? Again, was that just an evolution of what had happened with Roush Yates?
Yeah, well, I was working at Roush, and Chris, that worked at Car Store, had come in there and had spoken to us about sponsoring the series. So while he was in there, I got to know him, he got to know me, and he hired me to do event marketing for them at the races. In turn of this, my sister-in-law, who is involved with motorsports reporting, had said to me, I'd started a YouTube channel just for fun on the side, reviewing makeup products. And she said, "You're really good at speaking on camera. Why don't you consider reporting on race cars? You know so much about racing, you've been involved in it your entire life." And I'll never forget, because we were in a casino in Cabo, and she just like lays this on me, like, "You should really consider that." I'm like, "Yeah, maybe I will." So
Of,
I
of
did.
all places in a casino. How cool.
In a casino, yes. So I decided that I wanted to start doing some interviews, and it ended up snowballing from there, because then I became the face of the series. I started doing pit reporting, which is parallel with Pit Road TV, as you mentioned, and that snowballed into doing many other races. I did fan interactive. I've hosted events now. It it took time. I think most people think that it happens like overnight, but it definitely doesn't. I've been doing on air for essentially 8 years at this point.
Wow. I mean, you mentioned the fan interaction thing, and obviously interviewing drivers is one thing. Interviewing fans must have been a whole different animal because I guess some drivers are kind of trained to what they can say and what they're not. Fans aren't. There's no
Yeah.
filter. Um,
Yeah. I realize a lot of people are really camera shy. When you do talk to them, you'll ask them a question and they'll just be like, "Hey, okay."
freeze a bit, yeah.
Yes.
And did you ever have moments when you're standing there thinking, "Say something,
Yes.
please say something, please"?
I I got really good at being like pulling back and like trying to pull something out of them. Or before I would ask them, I'd like pull them aside and try to prep them a little so that they didn't feel so put on the spot. Because I can see how you'd feel that way. But fans are so fun. I really love to interact with the fans and do games with them at the races, or have them involved with the drivers. Like they don't have any stress. They're just there to have a good time, you
Yeah,
know? So they tend to bring out the best in an event.
good. Yes, we like that. I mean, I am a fan most of the time, so I would say that. I mean, you've got various like sort of like podcast and things. You got the Keeping Pace with Jacklyn one that came out, and then you got was it on the Motor Racing Network for the Sealed Off podcast? There was all these other things that you were doing, which again is just growing the the presenting, the hosting thing, which you obviously said that you were good at before. And that's the good thing. Yeah, it's like what I've done as well, not to the same success, obviously. But this is the good thing about the digital age, the internet, and that kind of thing. You can interact with people. You can bring the fans much closer through not little effort, but it is much easier to do that, isn't it? Now,
Yeah.
and you found that with your podcast.
Yeah, and I also have Monday Night Live, which I hosted. That's just straight through my Instagram. So,
And was that set up 2020, the lockdown thing? Was it
yes, it was.
you set it
Yeah,
up?
it was kind of something that was born. So Sealed Off was happening pre-2020. We were doing
Yeah.
the podcast. Of course, everything that comes with COVID, things getting shut down, Sealed Off, what closed, and I still wanted to do something. So then I had Monday Night Live, and I started out doing it with just local short track racers that I knew. But then I elevated it and had on several different cup drivers. I had on midget champions, dirt midget champions. I had on some sprint car drivers. So I really wanted to elevate all of motorsports, and it was a really cool way to interact with fans. They would jump on there and they could add questions live because it was live on Mondays. So I really did enjoy that, and it actually was a piece that catapulted me into the first ever conversations with NASCAR. And again, that happened like end of 2020, which I didn't get hired at NASCAR until I guess it was the end of 2021. So it took a lot of time for things to actually materialize into a job there.
I mean, I think it's great that it's led from obviously 2020 was, well, it sucked, didn't it? I mean, I mean, it hit the whole world hard, and we lost many people. It was absolutely awful, but good things like that have come out of it. I mean, obviously not to the same extent. It's why we're sitting here now doing this. I started doing this in the lockdown, but I think it's amazing that from something that was a huge negative for the world, there are stories like yours that have come out of it where you've ended up getting a job with NASCAR, which is pretty amazing. Because again, through the research, was it you contacted someone? Was it via LinkedIn or something, or there was contact made? Um, can you just tell us how it all unfolded? And basically, because I read something about you and the off ramp, and you had to pull over, and because you were,
Yes.
um, how did it all come about? Because it's fantastic. It's a fantastic story.
Well, what's interesting is I had met with someone at NASCAR. I had applied for a position and met with someone at NASCAR probably like, I want to say it was like spring of 2020. Of course, COVID happened, hiring freeze, everything that comes with the lockdown.
Yeah.
Then I create the show. I have the show, and I reach out to someone at NASCAR that's involved in the content side. And I essentially I just said, "Hey, I have this show. I think this would be great on y'all's channel. If you guys want it, I'm doing it. So I would love to do it for you." And that created a conversation of me developing these video features and pieces for them, to which I ended up doing that for them prior to ever getting the job offer, because it was like two different departments. So I ended up doing these video features for them, but it didn't happen until the summer, or yeah, end of summer of 2021. So
Right.
you have to think like that's a full year later of me having this conversation and then actually coming to fruition. At that point, I think it was like a couple weeks prior to, I had gotten a call. It was a different department. It was a guy that I interviewed with in 2020. And he said, "We have a job opening. We're hiring again. We have a job opening. I think that you would be great for the role. You should apply." So I'm like, "Okay, you guys want me to be a part of this program." That's essentially my Monday through Friday, which is what I have now, which is I'm a direct to consumer media strategist, a manager over a lot of our media strategy within our Roots program. We also have rights into IMSA. We have ARCAs included in that, the Wheel Mods. All of our sanctioned tracks are part of that. So this position was great for everything else that I have been doing, but also them being interested in me doing on camera talent, sports reporting. So I kind of can do both. Like I can go to the track and I can do both of those pieces. So when he called about that. And I was doing this over here in this other department. So it was like two different things happening at once. I applied for the position. I felt pretty strongly that, I had a good running at this, but I didn't, considering how long it had taken the first time I had these conversations with NASCAR, I really didn't think that it would come to like solidify as quickly as it did. And I think it ended up being, it was less than a month and they offered me the job. And that's what you had alluded to. They called me and I was like, yes, okay, hang on, set the phone down, pull over. And I just was crying. I'm like freaking out. I was like screaming in my car because it's something that has taken me 10 years to accomplish on getting this type of role that I can really help out in the community. And then also being a part of the broadcast is all I've ever wanted. I have more goals. We can get to that in a minute, but yeah, it did not feel real at all. I was stunned. I truly was stunned.
You must have been sitting there. I mean, you mentioned the timescale that it's taken. You must have been sitting there thinking, I've just got a job with NASCAR. That's amazing. And it's brilliant the way it came about as well, from, as I said, from the negative year that we had, or 18 months that we had as a global population, for something like that to come out of it for you is absolutely terrific.
Yeah, and I will say too, like we talk a lot about my job and you talk about 2020, but it's like, this is just one silo of someone's life, like their career, what they're doing in that aspect. But there's many other things personally that people have to deal with that is going on that you're also trying to navigate your personal life with. So 2020, definitely a lot going on for everyone all over the world. But a year later, for me, like it coming together and me getting this job, I thought was like, I remember calling my dad. We speak so much about him on here, but calling my dad and him being so happy for me because he's like, finally, Jacklyn, you can rest a little. You'll be. And he felt like it was like a secure place for me to be in when it came to my career. So it gave my parents a lot of relief, which they had been owed for a very long time.
Yeah, I'm sure, because parents worry and they're concerned, and as you say, it's a nice secure spot. Obviously, you're not going to stop looking upwards, but it's a nice base. It's a nice environment to be in, which is lovely. It's lovely to hear. I mean, just want to go into a few of the events. I mean, just again from the research here, just last year, you said I think it was on your Instagram. You put you went to 40 events, 26 racetracks, and 13 states. How did you keep on top of all that? I mean, because that's a lot of moving around. I mean, us Brits, most of us don't realize the USA is a big place,
Yes.
and you've been all over the place. That's a hectic year you had, wasn't it?
It was really hectic. And thinking back to January of last year, again, I'd only been at NASCAR for a few months. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know how often I was going to be traveling. I was actually a little nervous because I've been on the go so much. I'm like, oh, what if I don't travel a lot this year? Well, joke's on me because I ended up traveling a lot and going to so many different racetracks that I had never been to. So I really enjoy traveling. It takes a rigorous calendar in order to keep up with everything and manage friendships, relationships, personal time. I mean, but I feel like I've gotten better with that as I've gotten older, with just making sure, having things in order and traveling. And then keep in mind, you're also trying to do your job while on the road and not much time to recover sometimes after a late night at the racetrack the night before. So it was quite a year, and I'm looking at a similar year coming up.
Is it going to be another busy one? Which is good. It's all good.
Yeah.
And I think that's that's the thing that people don't kind of realize. I mean, take it to even to a bigger level, like say Formula One. Say, oh yeah, they're traveling around, they're driving cars, they're earning millions, they're doing this. You think of like the personal toll that it takes on people, which you allude to. I mean, you're traveling a lot, you've got a lot to organize in your personal life and your professional life. And but I think some people might look at what you do and think, oh, she's great. She goes to this event and that event and meets the drivers and broadcasts it, reports on it, does all the media work for it. That must be fantastic, which it is, I'm sure. But there's a flip side, isn't there? That I mean, you're going to get tired, burnt out. You're not going to be able to relax properly. And I think I'm sort of glad that you touched on that because things are never what they seem. That's like never the full story, is it?
No, I mean, I think social media is a tool that often leaves out other than what is seen just right here on the screen. And things can look so beautiful, but behind the scenes, everybody is still dealing and going through hardships or health issues, or they're just trying to all make it through. We're all just trying to make it through every day. So there's always challenges. There's no perfect life, no perfect job, no perfect situation, no perfect relationship. Like there's none of that exists. So you just have to try to do the best you can. And one thing that a lot of people don't see is all the study work that it takes in order to report on an event. Oftentimes I'm spending hours studying all of these drivers or looking up information. And especially on the short track side, there's no one handing me a stat sheet giving me the stats on all of these drivers. It's very difficult to find. So either I'm creating my own stat sheet based off of my own knowledge, or I'm researching these drivers, trying to figure out what's accurate, what's inaccurate, because of course, some things are inaccurate.
Yeah,
and
nothing's gospel,
Yeah, so it takes a lot of time. At one moment last year, I had a race on a Wednesday night. I flew back on Thursday. I drove to an event on Friday, drove back home, and then Saturday I had to drive to another race and drove back home. And in between all of that, I had to study for all three of those events within those 4 days, and I'm traveling. So there's a lot of times, like if I'm driving, I am on my phone watching videos, watching past races, trying to get, glean information. Then when I get to the track, I'm putting it in my notes, not to forget for the reports I have to do. I stay up late studying, like I'll be on the phone with my boyfriend, hang up with him, continue to study till 2 a.m, and then get up at 6, 7 a.m. So it takes a lot of time other than just showing up and talking about the race.
Yeah, I can totally get on board with that. I mean, I'm not saying I'm anywhere near as busy as you because I'm not, but I have a day job, but I have notes here that have been put together,
Right?
and that takes time. Take that, and if you're doing one of these a week or things like that, it takes up a lot of time. And as you say, up till 2, 3 in the morning.
Yeah.
People don't see that, but you've got to put the work in so it comes across well. I'm just terrified of looking like an idiot. Too late, but when you
study too, because I feel like the more I study, the more confidence I have whenever I do show up for, if you're doing a show or if you're doing a broadcast. If I've done the work, then I show up. I know what I want to say. I know who I want to say it about. I know how to structure my reports. So that's the good thing about the longer I've done this. I've gotten better at what really matters, where to get the information. When I get to the track, I know who to talk to. I know who to go to and find out to, make a complete, accurate report. Because that's the other thing. You're trying to report on things people want to hear, but you want to report on it accurately. So things change so quickly in sports, and that can be a challenge as well.
Yeah. And I think anyone that does what you do deserves a lot of credit because people say, oh, anyone can stand in front of a camera and report things, which you've touched on in the past. People freeze and you can't always do it. So, but yeah, and the work that goes in is just incredible. I just want to talk about a couple of the events. I'm just aware of the time. A couple of events that you did last year. You hosted the Drive for Diversity thing. I saw the little chat that you had with the four young ladies there. you said that felt like a full circle moment. That must have been a very cool thing to be involved with.
It really was, because I remember being that age and applying for the diversity program, which was sponsored by Mobile One. So Mobile One actually had reached out asking me to host that feature, and I was pretty floored, not to say the least, on what it meant for me, like the little kid inside of me that has wanted to be a part of this sport essentially my whole life, and then making it a reality. And then I get to sit there and watch these young drivers that want to make their staple in the sport, and they're just now starting their journey. So I think I was really nervous for them. Honestly, like I was so excited,
Because
but I
you
was,
knew.
yeah, again, like the wisdom thing, what's important and what's not. So you kind of just want to be like, you're like rooting inside for them, trying to be a mentor and, um, you know, give them all the positive vibes. And also too, like you want to make them comfortable in the interview so that they can feel like they can open up to you. And so that feature was one of those moments. And I loved getting to know all of them. They were all great people.
Yeah, and all four of them, they all seem to be quite comfortable talking to you, and I'm guessing that is a reflection on you and how you approached it. Because obviously, when you're talking to youngsters and kids, they can be a bit, almost like a rabbit in the headlights, and a bit, oh, what do I do? But they just seem to be just so easy going and confident. And I think that again, that's probably credit to you for making them feel that way. You probably said, "Look, don't worry, relax, it's all good."
Yeah. Well, I think too in motorsports there might be 5,000 men at the racetrack, and out of that 5,000 there might be 500, 300 women that
Yeah,
are being a part of the sport. So I try to always be open to, especially younger girls who are getting started, if they need anything, if they need advice, I try to help them in just like, hey guys, you can ask me. I will, try to lead you in the right direction. If I can't help you, I can find someone that can help you. I didn't necessarily have anyone that, like the saying is, like, send the ladder back down. I didn't necessarily have someone that was doing that for me as a woman when I was trying to get started in the sport. I just ran into someone who happened to be willing and wanted to help me in order to get my resume into the right hands that first time. So I've made it a personal, like, priority to send the ladder back down. I have laid resumes in front of people many different times, whether that's a young female trying to get into sport or a young male. I want people to know that I will help the best I can, because like I said, I didn't feel like I had that, and it made it really difficult for me mentally and starting out, because I always felt like I'm the underdog. Do you really belong in working in the sport? I know you love racing, but like, will you make it? And if you work hard, like on anything in life, if you work hard and you stay true to yourself, true to who you are, it will work out. And that's what, like, most people do not understand,
yeah,
especially in sports when everyone else really wants you to fail. Like, work hard, be true to who you are, it will work out.
absolutely love that. Love that attitude. You mentioned, yeah, like the gender thing. I'm going to come to that very, very shortly, because that's a whole other thing I want to talk about, not for too long, because I don't want to keep you too long. But we're going to come to that very quickly. One thing I do want to talk about, the Chili Bowl Nationals. These look absolutely brilliant. This is something I want to go to. People probably haven't, again, Brits probably haven't got a clue what this is. It's like a indoor, I forget where it was. Was it in Tulsa? I can't remember. Was it Tulsa?
Tulsa,
Anyway,
you got it.
nerd here. But I mean, it's like an indoor short track dirt midget
Mhm.
racing thing, and it just looks like a fantastic event. It looks absolutely brilliant. You get some of the NASCAR drivers in, all the and the truck series racers, and all the the ARCA series, all those guys. They come down and have a race, and they all get. It just feels like one big party. It just looks fabulous.
It is one big party. Yeah. So the Chili Bowl Nationals is in Tulsa, Oklahoma. You hit on it. It is the largest indoor race, if not the largest dirt race that exists. They have well over 300 entries every year. It takes place in an expo building. It's the largest freestanding expo building in the US. It might be in the world. I'm not sure. I have to double check that.
Wow.
But they build a track in there and it sits in there for 2 weeks. So it's there for the Tulsa Shootout and then the Chili Bowl. And I've been attending the event for 17 consecutive years. It's my favorite event. My parents have a Chili Bowl team that competes in it almost every year. I think last year was our 10th year having the team. And it's just so much fun. The best racing, high energy. I'm like, that's my love, the Chili Bowl. I love the Chili Bowl.
It's great, even smiling just talking about it, which is always the best endorsement, isn't it? That's brilliant. I need to get myself there. I had a quick look back at some of the winners over the years. Obviously going back to, I'm sort of giving up my age way now, but guys, sort of, you know, we had like Tony Stewart's won it. We've got like Rich Vogler and Donnie Beechler. I remember watching them in the Indy 500. But even, you know, you got guys like Carl, you know, like you know, you got like Kyle Larson, you got Christopher Bell, Brian Clausen, who very sadly no longer with us, but and like Billy Boat as well. I mean, some big names have gone down there and won it, which oh man, I really want to go. We need to have something like it in the UK. We need to have something.
You definitely need to go to that. I would say you should come out here in January, go to the Chili Bowl, and then just stay, go to the 500, and then you can go back home.
Sounds like a holiday. That's happening. Thank you. No, that sounds fantastic. Just another very quick thing. Looking to the future, obviously you're very happy with what you're doing now. Would you sort of look into sort of moving up to the, you know, to reporting on the full NASCAR thing? You know, we've got like Jamie Little's doing it. Or would you go into the commentary booth or anything like that? Come up with another Darrell Waltrip-esque kind of catchphrase?
Well, last year was my first year I ever did booth announcing. I was one of the only females to ever announce at Bowman Gray, and I actually really did enjoy that. There are people that are much better than me at booth announcing, so I don't know if I'd ever get that opportunity at the upper level, but definitely as far as my goals are, I want to be on a national broadcast. I have shadowed Jamie Little. We actually prepare for races in a very similar way, which was comforting to see whenever I shadowed her at COTA last year. But I would love to do pit reporting in the upper three. So whether that's Cup, Xfinity, or truck, that's my goal. It's been my goal for the 8 years that I've been doing reporting. I feel like really confident that that could come to fruition. I've also had, you know, the interest to do it for other types of racing as well. So, you know, I feel like I've come this far. I'm so close to the goal line. I'm like, I can taste it. I'm right there. I really hope it works out. I really do.
I'm sure it will. I mean, obviously, if it continues on the trajectory that you've been on, no reason why it can't. So obviously, everything crossed, because I think that'd be very cool to see. That'd be great. And I won't ask you to do the boogity thing. I won't ask you to. Don't worry.
Okay,
I can't do it myself, so I wouldn't. Don't worry. I love that. Some people hate it. I think it's brilliant.
I like it. It kind of reminds me of like early 2000s NASCAR.
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned we've got this like American Speed Fest at Brands Hatch, and there's the NASCAR Euro Series that comes over to it. And I remember the first time I went, because we were standing at the first corner and you can't see the start finish line from there. And when the green lights went out, I just shouted out the catchphrase, and all these very staid and plain Brits were just sort of looking at me going, "What are you talking about?" That's just me.
I love it.
I don't care. You mentioned you went back racing. Was it 2021? Wasn't it? In the
Yes.
excuse me, in the like late models. That must have been cool after 10 years, because
Yeah,
and it was delayed a bit, wasn't it?
it was delayed a bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was, well, for two reasons, but essentially the last time I had raced late models, I was 19. I was 29. I had made a list of the 29 things I want to do before I turned 30. Racing again was on there because I was like, you know what? I haven't raced in my 20s, and that's just unacceptable. We have to change that. So I got some sponsors. I had contacted a team. We ended up doing a throwback to my old number, which was the number 2. So we were supposed to go racing. I believe it was in the spring. I had an off weekend. We were supposed to go race at Orange County Speedway was my original thought. And then I went roller skating and broke my arm. So
Oh,
yeah, that was great.
I didn't know that. Oh,
Yes, so
whoops.
I'd gone roller skating. I broke my arm. I had to go through physical therapy for like 6 months. It was something ridiculous. And then when we set a new race date, they had the tire shortages here.
Yeah.
So then we had to set another date, and we ended up racing at Southern National instead of Orange County.
Wow. Well, I mean, I wasn't aware of the broken arm thing. That's ouch, painful. Painful. And
Yeah.
also the tire shortages as well. It's just like, oh, for goodness. But yeah,
But
first time I went racing. That must have felt great to get back behind the wheel and go.
yeah, I loved it. You just make better choices. Again, the wisdom thing. You just make better choices at an older age when racing versus when I was in my teenage years. I was really bad at thinking about the long term of a race, saving my equipment versus I was able to knowledgeably know, hey, I need to take it easy. Right now, these guys are being crazy. I'm just going to lay back, save my tires until the end of the race. So we ended up finishing 7th. I was really happy with that because I wanted to do a top 10. I told the team, I said, top 10, I'm happy. Top 5, and we're having a party. So I was really happy with 7th, and I'm actually contemplating going back racing again. I am trying to find a weekend that works. I've talked to some more teams. So, but for me, like racing and trying to make it into a career, that's not my goal. Like I'm trying to race because I enjoy the sport and I like the competitive side of it. I like to be involved in it. So I'm not just looking at late models, I'm looking at other things. I really can't
Okay.
reveal that yet, but yeah.
Keep our eyes open for that. See what comes up. um, Again, I'm aware of the time, but something we'll come back to. It's kind of the elephant in the room, isn't it? The gender thing, because historically it's been, yeah, motorsport is such a male-dominated series, or world, I guess, with some notable exceptions from going back down the years. Um, have you ever sort of experienced any sort of like, I don't know, any, well, not abuse, but any sort of like dismissive behavior? Oh, she doesn't know what she's doing, or because she's a female. Some of these stupid misogynistic idiots that
Yeah.
come along.
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean, I mean, you must have been on the end of it. I mean, that I think that's something that us guys don't realize. We've got like we've had like the W series, which we're coming into in a minute, and it's a 50-50 split because people say, oh, these women don't want to compete against just women and blah blah blah, and it's counterproductive and it's divisive and blah blah blah. But as males in the motorsport world, we don't know how frankly terrifying it could be for a young girl trying to get into the
Mhm.
area. So I was just wondering what your sort of thoughts on that, because you must have been on the receiving end of it.
Yeah, I've actually spoken pretty openly about when I was young. 7, 8 is the earliest I can remember. Right around then was the first time I ever had an interaction with another driver that did not like that I was racing. And then I remember whenever I was probably 11, I remember a boy that I raced against, his family did not like that I beat him on the racetrack. And so they physically,
Grown-ups.
yeah, the father was not happy about it, and he physically beat him in the trailer next to our trailer for losing against a girl.
That's ridiculous.
I mean,
My goodness.
there's many stories, and I swear one day I need to like come out with a book or something,
Do
because
that.
it's something that's a lot better now, because there are so many different, there's lots in even the lower series, lots of girls that are now coming up through the ranks. It's not where I raced, I was the only girl. So it's not so much of like very rare to see now. It's
Yeah.
still, there's not as many women as there is men, but there was many things that whenever I was the only girl there that would happen. I remember I started getting involved in Pokemon cards when I was really young, so that the other boys would like accept me and like invite me to like play at the track.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's something that does happen. And my boyfriend, who I mentioned, he has been involved in racing his entire life. Similar story, started when he was young, his entire family involved in it. Since we've been together, he has been so like awakened to the things that even happen now as me, an adult, just working in the sport, that don't make sense to him, because
Yeah.
we have different challenges being involved in motorsports. People automatically assume that you're the girlfriend at the racetrack or the wife, or it's your first time ever there. They automatically assume that I don't know anything about racing, nor how could I know anything about racing because I'm a female in the sport. Um, there's many things, and I don't necessarily like dwell on the negative. I just focus on the positive, because I know who I am, and
Yeah.
what anyone says doesn't affect me and the core of who I am, and like that's their own personal problem. If they like want to concern their lives with what I'm doing is really bothering them. But
Yeah. It's a
on
kind
the
of a sad existence, isn't it? If what you're doing is the focal point of their life. I think you
yeah,
come out of that better.
but exactly. But like on the flip side of it, I love a good underdog story. So I kind of like that people like underestimate me already because I'm involved in a male dominated sport. I'm sure
Yeah.
women that are working in NFL or in basketball or things of that nature, like I'm sure they deal with all the same things. So I kind of like it, and I just use it as motivation for me to be even better, because it's like, okay, if I go at this and I'm actually good at it, they're going to be surprised. But if I'm the best at it, they're going to be like, wow, not only is she a female in the sport, but like she's the best that I've ever seen do XYZ. So that's kind of the way I look at it.
Excellent way to look at it. I love that. I love it. I mean, and I mentioned, I mean, you said that, your boyfriend perhaps wasn't aware of some of the things that go on. And I mentioned the W series, which I guess you're familiar with. We had like Sabra Cook was on here, and obviously she's raced in it. We've got Chloe Chambers, I think, from the States, and there's a few others. I think Natalie Decker went to the tryouts for it and didn't make it and everything. And I think the fact that it's fully female, it's almost, you're eliminating that kind of side of, you don't know what you're doing, you're female, this is a man's world, or whatever the thought process might be. And I think, as I touched on, some people don't understand how difficult it is for females. Because we as white males in motorsport, we've got nothing to worry about, which is terrible. That's not the way it should be. And I just think, I mean, the W Series, maybe on a racing side, it might appear divisive and there's no progression, and they've now set up the F1 Academy and all that kind of a thing. But it doesn't have to be, we have to fast track a woman into F1. That's not the goal. It's getting drivers, analysts, mechanics, aerodynamicists, media people. It's getting them involved in a world of motorsport that is not as scary, not as abuse filled, which surely can only be a good thing.
Yeah.
That's my opinion.
Yeah, and I think, there is some truth to what you're around and what you see as a child is what you end up believing as an adult.
Yeah,
So if you think about young girls or the young boys now, if they see, hey, it's completely normal for a field full of women drivers, or a young girl sees a woman pit crewing or as an engineer, or there's truth to if they can see it happening, then they can believe that they can go and do it. So I think the W series is definitely eliminating that layer of the younger generation and thinking that it's unobtainable. Because right now, if they only see one girl in the field, they'll be like, oh, so like it's only that one. It's
yeah,
really difficult to obtain. I can see both sides of what you're saying about how, oh, they're not involved in F1 yet, or like it's pulling them out. But uh, overall, like I just think that no matter how it should come about, women involved in motorsports in any capacity is always a good thing, and just overall growing the factor of having women within the sport. So I mean, I don't really see it as a negative thing. And if it's going to bring more girls into the mix and they can do great things and break the glass ceiling even more, then I'm all for it.
yeah. Here. This is the kind of the generation we're in. It's the instant gratification, the social media, the online. Everything must happen now. It doesn't have to be about the here and now. There's a whole generation coming up, and as you say, they can be inspired to get into motorsport whichever way they see fit, which is, I think, is the most important thing. Yeah, we've got the likes. I mentioned, we've got there's like Natalie Decker who's come on for a chat. She's doing bits and pieces in NASCAR. You've got Hayley Deegan who's racing and she's kicking some backside in the SRX, and which is cool. We've got Brittany Zamora and Amber Balkan and like Kaylee Ray Bryson. She's coming up. She's very, very good. There's just lots of female racers doing some good stuff on track, isn't there? Which is great to see.
It really is. And I feel like this is finally a movement of where we don't have, again, one female driver. We have two handfuls of female drivers that are coming up through many different aspects of the sport, whether it's dirt racing or asphalt racing, or they're going and doing SRX. Like you see them in all of these different areas of motorsports. And that's so enlightening. I love to see that. And
Yeah,
if we can all just be supportive, because that's the other thing. Like if right now, if a female driver gets involved in a wreck, the first thing someone's going to say is, oh yeah, no, she can't drive. But we're
yeah,
not saying that about every driver that
yeah,
gets involved in a wreck. So if you see a female driver and she gets involved in a wreck, she's like, dang, she was having a good day. Like
yeah,
that should be our reaction, because immediately going to a negative reaction against someone that already knows that they have the odds stacked against them
yeah.
isn't going to do any good. And
Doesn't help.
like you said, it just takes time. Like anything in life that's great takes time. So there's young drivers that are both male and female that move up through the ranks really quickly, and we just have to give them grace as they learn to develop as drivers.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there is. I've spotted the same thing. If it's a female involved, everyone criticizes. And in NASCAR, there's one driver who gets a lot of stick, and that's Bubba Wallace. But that's another. It's an entirely different argument. That one. We'll park that. Just in someone's commented, they've just said like Janet Guthrie. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
she was the one, and we've had like Danica Patrick, Sarah Fisher, and so many
Yeah.
others. Excellent. Keep up the brilliant work. Right. Okay. Hour and 25 minutes. So we've got just some fun questions. I always like to wind down with some fun questions, and I got a couple of comments we're going to finish with. You have a dog who has the coolest name. This is the best name for any American motorsport fan to call their dog. Hoosier.
He's looking at me. Come here. He's been sitting in here trying not to bother me. Come here.
He can come up and say hi.
He just turned 10.
There he is.
He just turned 10. Did he look
There
at
he
it? He just turned 10 years old. I named him after Hoosier Racing Tire, obviously.
Yeah.
Whenever I adopted him, I was like, I am getting me a puppy and I'm naming it Hoosier. And okay, thank you.
There he is. Oh, he's
Yeah,
lovely. We love him.
he's very
Special
small.
guest. Oh, lovely. We love it. Love that. Great name. Excellent name. Okay. Did you have a favorite driver when you were growing up, when you were watching racing? Apart from your dad, obviously.
Yes, I was a Dale Jr. fan and a Casey Kane fan. So
Yes.
I feel like that's like the typical answer, but I had posters of both of them. And since then, I have met both of them and I've interviewed Dale and Casey. So, yeah.
Awesome. I'd love to get Dale on. He knows one of the British touring car drivers, and the British touring car driver came on for a chat and said he'd put me in touch with Dale, and he hasn't. But I'll get him, because what a legend. I mean, him and his father, of course. Yeah, you can't go wrong with that. Oh, let's have a look. Oh, we like this. Favorite car you've ever raced, or favorite thing you've ever raced? Have you got a favorite? It's a tough one.
Yeah, it would probably be, oh man, probably a late model. I drove an asphalt modified last year, and that's really fun. I actually would like to compete in an asphalt modified race, but I love late models. Like they are like my favorite thing to drive at the moment. And I would think that I would like dirt midgets too, but I haven't jumped in one of those yet.
Even I'd like to have a go at that, and I haven't got a clue how to do it. But yeah, one day.
Yes.
Give it a go. Okay. I mean, obviously you work within NASCAR, but you're obviously a fan as well. Have you got a favorite circuit that you like to report at and attend as Jacklyn, the fan? Have you got one that you think, yeah?
As me, the fan, well, I really like to watch Bristol Dirt, the Cup race. I like to go to Martinsville. I also like
That's
to
one I
go.
want to go to, Martinsville. I don't know why.
Yes, the paperclip is really cool. Like it just produces good racing.
Yeah.
And then I love the 500. I love Phoenix. Phoenix is beautiful. But yeah, I mean, I try to take like a little bit of time out of all the races I travel to like enjoy it as a fan. I'll go up into the grandstands and stand up during the start of the race. So, but those are a few of my favorite.
Awesome. Brilliant. I'd also like to go to the Clash at the Coliseum just because it just looks mental.
I know. I wanted to go there this year and I ended up not being able to just with my schedule. But I think that would be a really cool one, especially with all the music that's going on in the Coliseum. Yeah. It seems like the fans are just crazy.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of fun. Right, I've got to ask this. You mentioned Martinsville. As someone who's involved with NASCAR, Ross Chastain's wall ride, good or bad? Because I loved it. I thought, what a ridiculous thing to do. It was fantastic.
I was watching it live, and when they showed it, I thought that something was wrong with my TV. I'm like,
you thought it sped up or something?
Yes, I'm like, what did I just see? And I literally was just sitting here watching it because, of course, it was a cutoff race, and I was just like, what? And then I'm like looking at my friends, I'm like, what did we just see happen? Of course, then I go to Twitter, and Twitter's exploding with that moment. So hats off to Ross. I'm sure he was bruised up the next day because that's a really hard hit to take.
Yeah.
Which now it's like outrolled to do, but I think he'll forever go down in the history books as one of the most iconic NASCAR moments.
Definitely. And he said he was worried because obviously you've got like gates that open up in the fence, and he said, I've got to give it a go. And he said, if I hit one of those, I'm in a lot of trouble. So for him to have the what's to do it was to pull it off as well. I mean,
throttle down.
Because obviously I couldn't watch it live because it was middle of the night here. And I saw it the following day, and I knew who won, but then I saw like Ross Chastain was like trending on social media, and I thought, oh God, what's happened? Is he had a really bad one? And they showed it, and I was the same as you. I was like, what did I just see? That's anyway. Yeah, good. I'm glad you loved it because I did. Okay. What have we got? Very, very quick. Oh yeah. Any plans to visit the UK? We've got some good racing over here. We've got some good racing. British touring cars.
I am. I actually have a really close friend that is competing in World Supercross.
Oh yeah,
So I
I love
am
that.
debating about traveling to go to some of those races, just because I've been dying to go overseas. I haven't gone overseas yet, and I think that it would be like good to pair it with some type of race. Of course, there's like plenty of F1 races that I would love to go see. They're just so
Too
expensive.
expensive.
Yes, it is
Um,
expensive.
it's very expensive. We couldn't believe it when we went to the Indy 500. The tickets, it works out as 82 pounds, I think it was. And you can't get near the British Grand Prix for £82. So, it's good. We've got some good stuff over here. But yeah, but the World Supercross is great stuff. Okay, one more question. Okay, is there one motorsport event on your bucket list that you'd like to visit as a fan or report at? Is there one that you think, yes, that one?
Well, as a reporter, I would love to pit report the Daytona 500. I'm just going to manifest that. I think that's the pinnacle of that's like the top of where I could get and what I'm currently doing.
Yeah.
Uh, I don't even know if that will ever happen. I hope it will happen. As a fan, though, you keep talking about Indy, and I have yet to be there, and I need to go. I know, so I would love to go to that.
It's awesome.
I've been to the racetrack, but I haven't actually attended the event, so.
Although from what you said about Daytona, you might be disappointed by Indy. I don't know. I mean, but no,
I
it
doubt
is. I mean, they call it the greatest spectacle in racing, and from my experience, it is. But I haven't done Daytona yet, so we'll see. No, fantastic. Okay, right. I've just got a few quotes here. I think are great ones to leave on. Oliver Taylor, just going back to what we're talking about, he said, "A good driver is a good driver, and a rubbish driver is a rubbish driver. It doesn't matter if they're male or female. Race driver's a race driver." We like that.
Mhm.
What we got here? Christian Carver. Yes, we like this. Christian, good evening, afternoon, wherever you're tuning in from. It says, "Don't listen to the haters, Jacklyn. Keep doing what you're doing and keep kicking some behind with what you're doing as a pit reporter."
Aw, thank
We
you.
get bored with that, absolutely. And I'm sure there was something else. Oh yeah, now we have to close with Michelle, your friend. It's a nice comment, don't worry. She says, "Obviously, I'm her best friend, so maybe I'm biased, but Jacklyn really is one of the hardest workers I know. Super proud to get to watch her conquer everything she puts her mind to." And she says, "This has been a great interview." So,
Aw, you're gonna
and
make
she
me
obviously
cry.
knows you best. She obviously knows you best, and I think that's the perfect way to
It
finish
has
off.
Yeah, it has been quite the journey. Journey is not over, but I'm so thankful for her and, my family for supporting me through all of it, because nothing, worth having is worth having without the people beside you, so.
The perfect line to finish on. And it's been absolutely fantastic. Obviously, huge congratulations on where you've got to so far, and congratulations for wherever you're going in the future. But no, we've run over a bit longer than we had planned. My apologies, but no, thank you very much for coming on and having a chat. It's been great to hear about motorsport from a slightly different perspective. So thank you so much for coming on. It's been brilliant.
Of course, thank you so much for having me, and I can't wait to see everyone else you're gonna have on this year, and, hope to run into you whenever I'm out there at some international race sometime.
Yeah, if you're in the UK, we'll sort something out. Obviously we're English. We'll have to have a cup of tea or something, and a
Of
tour of a
course.
castle or something, because that's what we do here.
Just give me a cup. I have to get one of those cups.
Exactly, we got to do it. Great stuff. Thank you everyone for the comments and for tuning in. Much appreciated. And again, Jacklyn, thank you so much for joining us. And we'll see you all very soon. Good
Thanks,
night.
everyone.